Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord. Welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we have 3 new cards to talk about: a new Produce SSR for Mikoto, Support SSR for Amana, and Support SSR for Nichika. Keep in mind that Mikoto and Amana are limited. They will not be returning for the foreseeable future, as this is not a Twilight's collection, so unless they decide to change up the rules with reruns, we won't be seeing them for a while. If you're a fan of Visual Shees or Visual Alstroemeria, this is a great banner for you. If not, it's fairly safe to skip. Starting things off, we have Mikoto. Mikoto 3 drops onto the scene with the advent of players figuring out how to make Step really pop off. As a result, Mikoto 3 has immediately seen a ton of success because you can effectively make her a grad unit without even having access to the mode personally, which has been a game changer for Shees as a whole. She's a pure visual unit that has AoE appeals, can generate memory gauge, and has baked in synergy with Nichika by buffing her appeals. Her unit-related passives this time revolve around Illumine, Hokura, and Alstroemeria, which puts the recently released Mono 8 in good hands on a non-Illumine team. And with some effort, finding Hokura or Alstro cards to create synergy won't be too complicated either. There's a lot to like about Mikoto, especially because her memory appeal is identical to Nichika. You can freely choose to run Mikoto as a center or your visual damage dealer depending on the cards you have. Her roles are center, a buffer towards Nichika, an attack roll unit, and she applies memory gauge boost. I moderately to highly recommend pulling for Mikoto. Mikoto's initial skill is a visual 2.5 appeal to all judges that raises Nichika's appeal strength by 1.0 for 2 turns and grants you 15% memory gauge. This links into a visual 70% buff for 4 turns. The max version of this skill is a visual 4.0 appeal to all judges that raises Nichika's appeal strength by 1.0 for 4 turns, grants you 25% memory gauge, and links into the same visual 70% buff for 4 turns. Her 1-star passive is a visual 50% up and memory gauge 20% up that requires the full Shees lineup and has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a visual 150% up that requires 4 or more total unique units and has a 30% chance to activate twice. Her 3-star uncap is a visual plus 150, and her memory appeal when maxed out is a visual 2.0 appeal that links into another visual 2.0 appeal to all judges. Now you may have noticed 4-star is not here, and that's because Mikoto has 3 of them. Mikoto's 4-star passives are dependent on the team members you run. If you have at least one Illumination Stars member, you get a Vocal Dance visual 85% up that has a 15% chance to activate twice. If you have at least one Hokura member, you get a visual 100% up that also has a 15% chance to activate twice. And if you run an Alstroemeria member, you get a visual 90% up with a mental 10% heal that has a 15% chance to activate twice. Now this does mean you have to get 3 individual passives, but this does help you decide which passives are actually useful for you if you decide to not run any of these particular members. For the support recommendations, Visual hasn't changed the lineup much at all with this update, so this will be mostly similar to Mono 8's support selection. Asahi plus the newer Mei have proven to be a great duo, so we'll give them slightly higher priority than Uchikuru. Nichika is obviously really good here because of unit synergy. The alternatives include the new Nichika in case you've just missed out on her limited card, but also cards like Mamimi or Madoka who help with masteries, or Mei if you had already invested into her before Backstage Mei released. Everything here is a solid choice for the setup. As for the team recommendation, the truth behind Visual Shees is that you can really pick whoever you want. Since the majority of your game plan revolves around Mikoto and Nichika, your choice of unit can really come down to whatever your strongest cards are, or whoever awards the most points, and whichever works with their specific passives. Ideally, we want to use as many different members to activate Mikoto's passives, and thankfully they have one overlapping unit in Alstroemeria between Mikoto and Nichika. With Mikoto's appeals, you can bolster Nichika's appeal strength by a staggering amount, letting her deal obscene amounts of damage with her memory appeal by turn 2 or 3, depending on luck. As a center, Mikoto I would say is an A- to an S. Mikoto 3 earns slightly lower scores than Nichika 2, because there's a very key detail here that actually makes Nichika a fair bit better, which we've already been talking about. Because Mikoto 3 buffs Nichika appeals by 1.0 for a set number of turns each, you have the potential to buff Nichika's memory appeal by 2.0, making it a double visual 4.0 if you rotate from your 4-star appeal to 0-star and then use Nichika's memory appeal. You don't have that same luxury if you use Nichika 2, you would have to use Nichika 1, and even then, that would only be a 1.5 times buff. So that's just something to keep in mind when deciding who to run. As a unit, I would say she's an A to an S+. This character is honestly kinda crazy, but she has to be very delicately built around. She has to have 4 members to make the most of her power, which means she's almost entirely built to be a She's team unit, or just on a big ol' pile if you have no interest in memory appeals. You'd most likely prefer the former, because at least there's kind of a win condition there. On paper, this character is pretty messed up, and should give She's a proper point of contention at being one of the better teams as we move, especially as people learn to optimize step, which is something that She's especially can make pretty good use of. Next up we have Amana. Amana, after what feels like ages, gets her limited visual support, who we of course have to compare and contrast with Cherry Jelly Amana, who was a mainstay for plenty of visual teams over the years. What this Amana lacks in stamina mastery, she makes up for in SP generation and the ability to raise your maximum visual. She also has much better passives than Cherry Jelly, but she feels really geared to sit next to Avalon Tenka if she's available. She's a really good card, but probably needs to be 2 stars before you really start considering her. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, and Rest Boost, and she has 4 unique support skills: Unit Mastery SP reaching plus 12 at level 80, Visual Mastery SP reaching plus 10 at level 75, Visual Mastery Visual Limit Up reaching plus 6 at level 80, and Excellent Boost reaching plus 10 at level 75. Her support appeal does scale, starting at a Visual 3.0, becoming a 3.1 with a 3% mental recovery at level 60, working its way up to a Visual 3.3 with a 15% mental recovery at level 80. Her TFD idea is Dance, her Insight Token for Grad is Visual, and her proficiencies in Landing Point are in Dance and Visual. Amana's 0-star appeal is a Visual Maximum 3.0 appeal that scales based on the total number of heals you've had in the run. We now know that this does actually apply both to healing as well as regen, which is why this card also then gives you a mental 3% regen for 3 turns. Her 1-star passive is a Visual 50% up and mental 5% recovery that requires the turn count to be 3 or earlier. This has a 20% chance to activate twice. She also gets a plus 50 mental uncap. Her 2-star passive is a Visual 100% up that requires your mental to be higher than 90%, but the turn count to be 2 or later, which has a 25% chance to activate twice. Her 3-star uncap is a Visual plus 100, and her 4-star appeal is a Visual max 4.5 that again scales based on the total number of heals, and applies a mental 3% regen for 4 turns. Amana gets an S. She's pretty good. She feels right at home in Visual Alstromeria, of course, but not much else unless you're building to never take damage. Under that condition, Visual Nocchill might be the second best place for her, but it's hard to say. She certainly has trouble utilizing her passives on almost every other team, which can be seen as a detriment. Her masteries feel incredibly useful in conjunction with supports that can provide stamina assistance. She's worth considering at the very least, and I moderately to highly recommend pulling her Amana. Lastly, we have Nichika. Our event card this time around is Nichika, who is a pure visual support with SP generation, an actually not terrible 2-star passive for once, and a kinda interesting 4-star appeal if you plan to specifically run She's. Said appeal scales based on the total number of different units that make up your team, and reaches 4.0 when 4 different units are included. When paired with Mikoto 3, who also asks for 4 units, the synergy is really in your face. Overall, not bad for an event card. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Stamina Support, and her unique support skill is Visual Mastery SP, reaching plus 8 at level 75. Her support appeal does scale, starting at a Visual 2.5, becoming a 3.0 by the time you're done with her. Her TFD idea is Visual, her Insight Token for Grad is Dance, and her proficiency in Landing Point is in Visual. Nichika's 1-star passive is a Visual 18% up that requires you to be in the visual position. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a Visual 50% up that requires the full She's lineup and has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a Visual plus 50, and her 4-star appeal is a Visual maximum 4.4 that scales up with every different unit in your lineup. Her event passive is a Visual 20% up that requires Nichika on your team, and it has a 40% chance to activate twice. Nichika earns a B. As mentioned before, Nichika is actually not entirely terrible. She's one of the more usable 2-star passives we had that could potentially have an impact in some degree. The only issue is that she crashes headfirst into the limited Nichika support, who is better in every conceivable way, really. If you're just recently starting a She's team and missed out, Nichika will hold you over until that rerun eventually happens. It's not the worst card in the world to have, so I recommend farming for Nichika while she's here. And that will do it for the video today. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. I really do appreciate all the support over the last few years with these videos. It really does mean a lot. Next time we'll be talking about whatever banner comes next, so let's look forward to it together. I've been Cho, thanks for watching, have a wonderful rest of your day.